And if it's red, it's recording.
Yes.
We capture class. That's the D section. That's the D section over there. We capture class because we got 9 students that are. You're okay today. We have 9 students that are at a distance, and
I haven't.
how'd you do that?
I printed it.
You are so. I'll send those that way. How many of you were in leadership theory last fall? Okay, so some of you, if you were, then you saw this. If not, you're wondering, this isn't going to be posted on YouTube for everyone. So whatever you say, only 9 other people might watch it. And so we have a grant from the USDA to take the last 2 years of the leadership curriculum to students at NEO, Connors, and MIT. That's Murray and Tishomingo, for you who don't know. And so we capture class. They're experiencing everything you're going to experience in class. They'll just be doing it remotely. The jokes will be the same. They'll get to watch. It has its advantage also for you. So if you have several grandparents that are sick and probably will die this term, then you can still watch class. And I shouldn't joke that, because at your state, there are grandparents that do pass away or get sick. But seriously, you miss class for whatever reason, you'll be able to watch class. So, anyway, let's walk through the syllabus. Several different ways to contact me. Email is the best way. You can send me a text if you want, if it's something important, or if you want to call me at the office, or you want to call me at home. Anyway, I just want you, if you feel a need to get in touch with me, there's lots of different ways that you can get in touch with me. The course uses this textbook, and it's the 2003 edition. Okay, if the author hadn't died, there would be a more current edition. Okay, but he died, and no one really took up the banner of rural sociology and change theory, and so it's the 5th edition, I think. So in some ways it may be, well, we think we've got everything in there. Some of the examples and case studies will seem dated to you, but most of them have agricultural implications. Some international, but mostly they're agriculture. This course is taught at some institutions in communications department. It's communications theory. Here it's taught as a leadership course. In some programs, it's taught as an ag education course. But it's change theory, and why it's important to agriculture is an industry that's always been looking at changes. The whole cooperative extension service is built around hiring people that are change agents to try and get people to adopt new technologies. And so it has particular implications, but it also is taught many places as a communications course. Kesto Settle, who's an ag communications faculty upstairs, taught this at Mississippi State as an ag communications course. And so it has various, I think, interdisciplinary, or has interdisciplinary value for most anybody. So depending on what your major is, I think there's value. If you have an interest in agriculture, you'll have interest. This book is cheap, is probably the most important thing, because it's been reprinted so many times. and is available. And so you don't have it and you want to buy it inexpensively, you can go to Amazon and get it for a few dollars. You can buy it new, I think, for $16. Has anyone purchased it online and had it sent, and how much did it cost?
I did the ebook.
Okay, ebook even, well,
It was like $4.99.
yeah. So when you have that microbiology class and your 3 texts total $450, this helped even it out maybe just a little bit. Okay. So this is our textbook. You will need it. Could you borrow it from somebody else that's in class? I suppose you could if you were roommates and you used it. If you know somebody that had the class and want to use theirs, again, we'll go back 2003, so they probably use this textbook. I might as well just say this now. I shake, okay, sometimes more often than others. Usually I'm carrying a plate with a fork on it. I'm okay. You don't need to walk me over to the Student Health Center. It's genetic, apparently. I don't think it's Parkinson's. I've done this for a lot of years. My mom also shakes, but as I go to do something here, I'm not nervous about being here. I just shake for whatever reason, just so you know that, and we'll have other full disclosures later so that you know about me. But that one's up front. We will have one group assignment that we'll talk about later, but realize that you will be split into groups later on in the semester. This course is very structured. There's 11 chapters in this book. Every Tuesday you'll have a worksheet due. Every Tuesday you'll have a quiz. Okay? So very structured. There's 11 chapters, so we'll count 10. Okay, so if you miss one, again, if that grandparent isn't feeling so well, if the fishing is really good that day, if you have antique auction to go to, whatever it is, we'll give you one. And the same as far as for the worksheets and the quizzes, we'll spot you one on that. We'll count 10 of those, or the 10 highest ones, or else we'll just count all of them. I don't know, but anyway, we've built in 100 points for each of those. Okay. The third item is group quizzes. So there's 11 chapters. The first 6 you'll have an individual quiz that's designed to hold you accountable for the reading. Okay, and we'll start that this Thursday, and we'll get a jump on things. And I'll look at the calendar in just a second here. But for the last 5, you'll also take a group quiz. So individually you'll take a quiz, and then I'll break you into groups, and you will take the quiz again as a group. Okay? And I don't think I've ever had a group that got a lower score than the individual got. Okay? The idea is that you get a chance to discuss the question and pool your brain power. You are one quiz away from being told in your group to be quiet because apparently you didn't read and we don't need your input, or apparently you did read and you have pretty good notes. Please speak up because you have the right answer and you just didn't say anything. Okay? So again, the first 6 will be individually, and then the second 5, the last 5 will be an individual, and then you'll also take it as a group, and I'll assign you to those groups. Okay, we'll have 2 exams. We'll have 4 homework assignments, and those will all be put in the Dropbox, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then the team diffusion assignment is 50 points. Okay. Okay. So kind of, you have this, but I also have it up here. So this Thursday is the 17th. You've got a worksheet due, and there'll be a quiz for a short one for Chapter 1. And then next Tuesday we'll do it again. It'll be Chapter 2, and then Chapter 3 we'll do next Thursday. And my philosophy here is in the spring semester to hit it hard early. Okay? It's dark a lot more. You might as well be working on classroom stuff. And we'll see that if we get most of it done, April will be escape for us. Okay? So then starting here on the 29th, we'll have quiz. So Tuesday, we're going to be gone here. And then you'll see that every Tuesday is a worksheet and a quiz. So you'll physically bring a worksheet with you. You'll hand it to us, and you'll take a paper and pencil quiz. Okay? First exam. Again, Ken, Grace, and I are going to be in Birmingham for that day. I don't know what we'll do. We may just have the quiz here. I may put it online. I'm not sure what we'll do. What'll be the best thing. Kind of wait and see how the flavor goes with us. So there's first exam, then homework, second exam, and then we will have been through all the chapters. Here are innovation presentations. You'll be split into groups, and you'll have a chance to apply the concepts from class to an innovation. I'll show you that in just a second. We'll talk about this. An open day review for, we actually have dead week in this class, and there's the final exam. If you don't want to take the final exam, you don't have to. Okay? The final exam will replace either exam score. And so it's a motivation to do well on the exams. It's also a little a mercy for those that didn't do well on the first or second exam. You could come back and show your expertise in the final exam. Okay? Okay. You can get some bonus points by sharing an innovation. This is posted under Essentials. This is the group assignment. And so you'll have, your group can choose. Here's some examples of some changes that you might want to bring about. If this class is about change, we might want to get in a high school to get students to, what is that? Control upper, how do I zoom? Class participation here, please. What?
Control plus maybe.
Control plus? That was it. Thank you. Okay, you can't answer any more questions. They're going to participate here. In a high school with an open campus, get students to eat in the cafeteria. How would you do that using course concepts? 2, how would you get people to quit burning their household garbage? My mom's 83 and she burns all her garbage at the road. Okay? There are laws against that, but apparently she doesn't care. Increase the instance of catch and release fishing or harvesting antlerless deer. Increase the amount of food which is consumed past the expiration date. Apparently my daughter Camley is convinced that something magical happens inside the refrigerator or inside the pantry when the expiration day. The day before it's just fine. The day after it's poisonous. How would you get people to compost food scraps, blah, blah, blah. So all different possibilities. So you actually your group will take an innovation, and an innovation is something that's just new to you, and see if you can apply the concepts we'll learn in class to get this innovation to be adopted. Number 1 is really tough. How you get juniors and seniors to eat in the cafeteria. Having raised 3 teenagers, I'm not sure I know the answer to that, but we can at least try and see if we can apply the course concepts, how to get a junior, senior to eat in the cafeteria when they could go spend all your money in a fast food restaurant. Okay? So anyway, those are the possibilities. And then here are course concepts that you'll cover. And then how the assignment works, and we'll talk again more about this later, but you'll get a chance to present, and then your classmates will get a chance to ask questions. Your classmates earn points by asking questions. They get bonus points if they ask questions that you can't answer. So that's kind of fun. Okay, so that's all that. Any question about syllabus? And again, if it's, do I need the book? Absolutely, you'll need the book. Anything that I went too quickly through, you want me to spend a little more time on? Okay, just let me see who's here. Now is a good time to tell me if you like to be called Bobby Ray, Sugar, whatever. Chelsea Alexander. Chelsea. Stephen Behringer, I think, likes to be called Stephen Behringer. Raina likes to be called Raina. Okay. Levi, you go by Levi. Bill, Cal, 4 for 4. Catherine Besner likes to be called Catherine. Queen Bee? No, Catherine Besner. Savannah Chandler. Hi, Savannah. You like to be called Savannah? Okay. Lydia Dance, I think, likes to be called Lydia, and there you are. Trey Elwood likes to be called Trey. Taylor Fields must be in Denver. Devin Foster likes to be called Devin Foster. Katie Freeman, I think, goes by Katie Freeman. Allison Genova. Allie. And Allie, am I your advisor? I hate that when I say so. Now tell me, what's your name, whatever, and I'll say, who's your advisor? You are. And so in some cases where I may have met somebody once, Katie Carroll, I don't know if anybody knows Katie Carroll, but sent me an email this morning, hey, will you let me in this class? And I was like, who are you? And, it's like, well, you're my advisor. Crap. I mean, who? Kendall Harshman? Kendall? Colt Heap? Colt? Katie Hilbrand's in Denver. Austin Jackson. Hi, Austin. Suzanne Jakes.
You can call me Susie, and it's Jake Lees.
How do you pronounce your last name?
Jake Lees.
Jaques. Oh, man. Okay. Probably like finals week, I'll probably get that right. Ashley Kuhn. Ashley. Okay. Corey Myers, I think, is also in Denver. Brianne Nelson likes to call Brianne. Brandon Pilgrim. Brandon, I don't know. Julia Pittman. Julia. Okay. Kylie Price. Oh, there you are. I thought, where's Kylie Price? Ryan Prindle, I saw there, back row. Fallon Sasser. Fallon, this is the NEO section right in here. Peyton Sweeten said he's going to stay in Denver. Generate Taylor's in the back row. William Weens. Weens?
Yes, sir.
Weens.
Can I go by Will?
What's your middle name?
Charles.
How about Willie C? Brady Womack. Oh, there you are. Okay, that's everybody. Oh, okay. Geography. Let's see if this is too, maybe not too dark. Jenna Ray, let's start with you. You pick the country down here, and you tell me where it goes. Anyone you want. You're lucky. You could, if you get the end, it's really tough. You want to take a stab at Afghanistan?
Sure.
Okay. You want to tell me where it's going to go? Is it in Africa?
No.
All right. Is it here in the Middle East? Is it getting closer to Russia? Is it over here somewhere? Remember they invaded it? Any of those? Yes, right there. There's Afghanistan. Okay, and we'll go right down the road since I don't have any idea who name I called besides Brady, who's next. And what's your name? Ashley. Okay. Okay. Right there. Bing. Ready?
Iran.
Okay.
It's
Hmm?
on the right side of Afghanistan.
Right there. Is it maybe this one? It's over here, the Persian Gulf?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Iraq.
Okay.
Left Iran.
Okay. Let's do Kuwait next. Where's Kuwait? Remember Iraq invaded Kuwait, and that's why I went to war with first George Bush?
It's got a little bitty one.
Right there. Excellent. Yeah.
Sudan is underneath you.
Great. Let's come back here.
Pakistan.
You're going to do Pakistan. Okay. Over here in Africa? No. Here around Turkey? Maybe next to Afghanistan? Excellent. Okay, now don't Google it. I see what you're doing back there.
Lebanon. And it's along the coast of the Mediterranean.
Maybe right there? Excellent. That it? I'm sorry, I've got an air conditioner in my...
The left central side of Africa.
Who?
Libya.
Libya? Like here? Excellent.
Okay, then. Afghanistan, Turkey.
Turkey?
And it's on the side.
Think like here? Excellent. Levi? Israel?
Should be right next to
Right next here, below Lebanon? Excellent.
Jordan.
Jordan, right here by here, maybe? Here? Excellent. Getting some help back there? Doesn't hurt. Can't cheat today.
Can I get Saudi Arabia?
You can do whoever you want. You think that's Saudi Arabia? Excellent.
I'll try
Colt?
Syria.
Colt, right?
Yes, that's me.
All right. Syria,
I think it's between Iraq and Turkey, right?
right there. Wow, we are smoking. Kylie.
Oh, Armenia.
Armenia. And the Turks invaded and killed half the Armenians, right? Excellent.
I'll do Chad.
You'll do Chad.
Isn't it over by like Afghanistan?
No, it's an African country.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Which one is it?
Yeah.
Here?
Yeah. No. It's next.
Here? Excellent. Katie? Morocco? Somewhere here? No. Like here? You don't know? Like here? Like here? Jackson? Liberia? I can't. Cyprus. Okay, and you know Cyprus is an island, right? Excellent.
UAE.
Which is what? United Arab Emirates,
Yeah.
right? And it's where? That little island right there? No?
The what? The board?
That one? Brianna?
The YEMEN one?
Yemen?
Yemen. Okay, it's right under Saudi Arabia.
Because you know Saudi Arabia is trying to kill everybody in Yemen right now, the Yemenis.
And then I'm in Qatar, and it's near Yemen. And
Okay.
then,
Here? Here? Yeah, excellent. What do you think? Palestine, and you know that Palestine is territory right there disputed with Israel. Excellent. Okay. Susie? Uzbekistan? Whew. You're brave.
Up by Afghanistan.
You think it's there? You think it's there? Think it's there? Okay, it's one of the stands that used to be Soviet Union. Okay. Mali? Anybody? Mali? Niger? Algeria? Bahrain? Or Bahrain? Tunisia, I think. Western Sahara, Oman, I believe. Oh, heck. Whoops. Azerbaijan, yep. Ah, heck. Okay. Now, other than to make you question whether you learned anything in 8th grade geography or not, how is it possible that so many of you are so bad at geography of this region, given that the United States has been very active militarily in this region for your entire life? Any thoughts?
Nobody really talks about it.
They talk about in the news all the time that we invaded Afghanistan and Pakistan harbors terrorists, and the Israeli conflict with the surrounding areas in the news all the time. What spring that there was protests throughout all of the Middle East, including Egypt, where we were basically democracy. OSU has had a relationship in Mali, one of the poorest countries, 3 poorest countries in the United States. Right now, the conflict in Saudi Arabia and Yemen, where it used to be all our oil came from, now it comes from Kingfisher and Woodward. But agriculturally, this is really an important region. Let me see how I'm on time. Agriculturally, this is a very important region. Historically, agriculturally, too many ales in there. But I want you to think just for a minute. Why is it that Europeans sailed westward and colonized the Americas, and Europeans went southward and colonized all of Africa, rather than the other way around? Why didn't Native Americans build ships, sail east, and colonize Europe? Why didn't Africans go north and colonize all of Europe? Why was it the other way around?
They already had plenty of resources.
What's that?
They already had plenty of resources.
Like?
Like trees and water.
There weren't a lot of trees in the Americas?
No, there were.
Lots of trees. Lots of natural resources, right? In Africa, lots of resources also. Okay, so they didn't have soil in...
They did, but it just wasn't as fertile.
The soil in the Midwest just isn't very fertile compared to France and Spain. The breadbasket of the United States, where we have soil 6 feet deep and we can let it erode for centuries and still be fine.
Western countries were started with that. I mean, just the Sahara was like the size of the United States. Those are huge areas. Europeans, I mean, what, Spain is the size of Texas?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of land in the Europeans, so they're looking for more land, looking for more resources.
That's the reason there were too many people in Spain and France. That's why they went.
They needed more resources to support the population.
Oh, there weren't as many people.
No, there's too many.
There were too many people for the area, and so that's why colonists all went to America to colonize, was because we didn't have enough land and we had too many people.
Yep.
Interesting perspective. Native Americans didn't have an interest in exploring.
They weren't forced to. They didn't have the competition. There was more land per individual, whereas in the Western or the Europeans, they were all packed into an island or surrounding areas.
What?
You had it spinning in circles.
Why was it spinning in circles?
Are there buttons at some of it? I bet you press the buttons when you cross your arms.
Okay. anyone think that the people in Europe were just smarter?
But, I mean, I heard a theory that they were talking about, so Native Americans, they learned to be sustainable on their resources. But the intelligence and the eagerness to go search for that gold wasn't there. I mean, it's not...
Native Americans weren't as smart as Europeans.
Well, not as smart. It's just... they weren't challenged as much. I mean, if you look at how their government was set up, the tribals, it wasn't as advanced as it was in Europe. Say.
Why, though? Because what you're saying is right. We had more advanced civilizations, but why? Why weren't the civilizations in the Americas or in Africa? Because they'd been around as long.
People in America were content with what they had. It was a different lifestyle than people in the Western world.
Okay.
They wanted to go find more land and have more power.
More aggressive, more competitive.
Yeah.
Anyone say it was God's way? That's how it's supposed to be. That's how it was supposed to be. That there would be people that would enslave others. That's just how it is, right? Okay. This is a book that has been out, I don't know, maybe 10 years. Jared Diamond, Gun, Germs, and Steel. He said there's these three things that explain why some civilizations advanced faster than others. Guns, germs, and steel. And how those organizations develop those. He takes it further back and say that it has its roots basically in agriculture. Okay? That agriculture is the reason that some civilizations advanced faster and then enslaved other cultures. Okay? So about 13,000 years ago is when we first had people move from hunters and gatherers to be farmers. And so hunting and gathering, which some of you would argue lots of Native American tribes did, and it's not sustainable for large populations. Okay? Because you got to find stuff, you have to move around, you're not always successful, and you can't sustain populations. You have to carry everything with you. Okay? And so he suggests that when civilizations adopted farming, okay, then they were able to have specializations. Okay? Then we can have people that figure out how to make iron, which then we can make into swords, and we can decide how to make guns. Okay? That's one of those reasons. And the book was made into a 3-part National Geographic PBS program, and we're going to see about 20 minutes of it that explains that just a little bit further and explains the geography part through agriculture. And so we're picking it up at like the 20-minute mark. I don't know sound-wise how I'm going to do here. It's going to take me a minute. But he's talking about when archaeologists figured out what they discovered were a granary. And they said, oh, there was farming going on about 12,000 years ago because this thing that they uncovered must have been used to store grain. And so we had to harvest enough grain that we could store this extra grain that would sustain us during times when we don't have grain.
From our perspective, it is probably the world's first granary in some form, a place where they're able to store food in a particular location on a year-round basis.
The team at DRA believes the granary was an oval-shaped mud wall building at the center of the village, a place where grain could be stored collectively. And the grains that were being stored were primarily wheat and barley. While other plants were no longer available, these cereal grasses were hardy enough to survive and durable enough to be stored for years. But if this was a time of scarcity, how was there enough grain to fill a granary? The answer suggests a radical shift in human behavior. At some point during the drought in the Middle East, people started growing their own food. maintain a mobile way of life, they would have stayed close to any source of water they could find and planted new fields of wheat and barley around them.
Rather than just following food sources around different locations, for the first time what people start to do is that they bring these resources back to them. Not just as harvested food, but they're bringing them in seeds. And they're growing them next to their village. And that's the first time, really, this is the first time we see this anywhere in the world.
The Stone Age people of the Middle East were becoming farmers. The first farmers in the world.
I think the planting density is a little high there. Same there.
Without realizing it, these new farmers were changing the very nature of the crops around them. With every round of planting and harvesting, they'd favor ears of wheat and barley whose seeds were the biggest, tastiest, or easiest to harvest. Traits that were useless to the plant in the wild thrived under human cultivation.
They interrupted the cycle. They interrupted the normal environmental cycle and started to select these individual plants and basically rewarding those that were going to be most profitable to them. And so even though it was accidental, once that whole process started, people are starting to control nature.
The way crops are changed by human interference is known as domestication. Today it happens in research labs, with scientists selecting genes and breeding crops to be ever more useful to humans. It's a very precise, deliberate process, but not so different from what the first farmers were doing unconsciously thousands of years ago in the Middle East.
That's the author.
The transition to farming was clearly a decisive turning point in human history. People who remained hunter-gatherers couldn't produce anywhere near as much food as farmers, and also couldn't produce much food that could be stored. They were always going to be at a crop disadvantage. Now I needed to know where else in the ancient world people had become farmers. If I could establish links between the spread of farming and the spread of civilization, I'd be well on my way to answering Yali's question.
There are only a few parts of the ancient world that developed farming independently. Not long after the Middle East came China, where people grew another high-yield cereal grass, rice. Pockets of farming also emerged in the Americas, based on corn, squash, and beans. Later in Africa, people farmed sorghum, millet, and yams. And in most places where farming emerged, a relatively large advanced civilization followed. But there was an exception to the rule, an area where farming didn't bring the same benefits. The highlands of New Guinea. For 50 years after Westerners colonized New Guinea, they thought the highland valleys in the interior were uninhabited. In fact, they were the most densely populated part of the island, with one of the oldest systems of farming in the world. Archaeologists now believe that people have been farming here for almost 10,000 years.
Okay, so he basically goes then to an area of the world where farming hasn't evolved, where they are not hunter-gatherers, but their civilization did not change. And so it's like, how come?
Almost as long as the people of the Middle East.
It's amazing to think that these people, Yahweh's people, were some of the earliest farmers in the world. But if they were farmers, why weren't they propelled down the same path towards civilization as the people of the Middle East or China or Central America?
And so you saw looked like some very rich farmland.
Why didn't they end up producing their own cargo? New Guinea farmers themselves were surely no less talented than farmers anywhere else in the world. So, what was the difference?
Highland agriculture was based on crops like these taro roots, which are very different from cereal crops. Taro is much more work. You've got to plant it one by one, unlike wheat where you throw your hand and spread the seed. And these New Guinea crops can't be stored for years the way wheat can. They rot quickly, they have to be eaten in a short time. They were also low in protein compared to wheat, so these farmers of New Guinea Islands suffered from protein deficiency.
I think they're growing some tobacco, though.
There's not much protein to be gotten from New Guinea's other crops either. People here farm local varieties of bananas. But although bananas are rich in sugar and starch, like taro, they're low in protein. In fact, people in the highlands have so little protein that sometimes they eat giant spiders to supplement their diet.
Where would y'all get your protein? Giant spiders?
Steak.
Yeah, eat beef, okay. Beef, pork, chicken.
I reached a moment of realization. Farming was clearly crucial to the story of human inequality. But just as important was the type of farming. People around the world who had access to the most productive crops became the most productive farmers. Ultimately, it came down to geographic luck.
It's an audacious idea that the inequalities of the world were born from the crops we eat. According to Jared Diamond, Americans have had an advantage over New Guineans because for centuries they've grown crops that are more nutritious and productive.
And now the next question is why?
Which provides about a fifth of all the calories they eat. The wealth of modern America could never have been sustained by taro and bananas. But Diamond's idea seems almost too simple. Could plants alone really have the power to shape the course of human history? Or was there something else at play? Another reason for the division of the world into haves and have-nots. By 9,000 years ago, the first settlements in the Middle East were giving way to much larger villages. People were only able to live on this scale by becoming more productive farmers. They were surrounded by fields of domesticated wheat and barley. But by now they also had another steady source of food.
What we see happening about 9,000 years ago is a remarkable transformation in the way that humans are interacting with animals. we begin to see a process of animal domestication, by which we mean humans were controlling where they were moving, they were controlling their feeding, and they were controlling their breeding. Instead of having to go out to hunt, you have a dependable meat supply on the hoof year-round around your site, rather than being subject to seasonal variations in wild game.
As well as meat, animals could be used for their milk, providing an ongoing source of protein. Their hair and skins could be used to make clothes for extra warmth. Over time, domestic animals became an integral part of the new agricultural way of life.
We know that the communities which first started to have domestic animals already had cereal crops, so they were cultivators. And the combination of these particular animals and the plants becomes an extremely attractive package in that they're complementary. After the harvest period, animals could be turned out on the stubble and they can actually eat the remains of the cereal crop harvest. In their turn, animal dung can be used to provide a sort of a fertilizer for the cereal crops as well, for crops. So the whole package, is seen to be mutually beneficial both for the animals and the plants, and of course for the humans.
She makes manure sound better than it is.
Goats and sheep were the first animals to be domesticated in the ancient world, and were eventually followed by the other big farm animals of today. All of them were used at first for their meat, but they all proved useful in other ways, especially with the invention of the plow. Before the Industrial Revolution, beasts of burden were the most powerful machines on the planet. A horse or an ox harnessed to a plow could transform the productivity of the land, allowing farmers to grow more food and feed more people. In New Guinea and many other parts of the world, people never used plows because they never had the animals to pull them.
Okay, so you can imagine what kind of agricultural progress you'd have if you had to do everything by hand. How many acres you could cultivate if you didn't have a horse, an oxen, or a donkey, or a mule. Okay, so huge.
The only big domestic animal in New Guinea was the pig, and it wasn't even native. It came in from Asia a few thousand years ago. While Europe and Asia had not only pigs, but also cows, sheep, goats, horses, buffalo, camels, and so on. Now, pigs do give you meat, but pigs don't give you the other products that you get from those European nation animals. Pigs don't give you milk, or wool, or leather, or hides. Most important of all, pigs can't be used for muscle power. Pigs don't pull plows or pull cars. The only muscle power in New Guinea was human muscle power.
Even today, there are no beasts of burden in New Guinea, and almost all of the farm work is still done by hand. But if farm animals were so useful, why didn't New Guineans domesticate any of their own? I decided to add up all the animals in the world that have ever been domesticated, and I was amazed by what I found.
There are nearly 2 million known species of wild animals, but the vast majority have never been farmed. Most insects and rodents are of no practical use to humans and not worth the effort of farming. Some birds, fish, and reptiles have been domesticated, but most are simply impractical to farm. So are most carnivores, not because they're dangerous, but because you'd have to grow other animals just to feed them. The best animals to farm are large, plant-eating mammals. domesticate all of them, usually without success. Despite repeated efforts, Africans have never domesticated the elephant. In South Asia, some elephants are used as work animals, but they're not farmed for the purpose. Instead, each elephant is caught in the wild and then tamed and trained. It doesn't make economic sense to farm an animal that takes some 15 years to mature and reach an age where it can start reproducing.
Animals which make suitable candidates for domestication can start giving birth in their first or second years. They will have one or maybe two offspring a year, so their productivity is actually high. Behaviorally, they need to be social animals, meaning that the males and the females and the young all live together as a group, and they also have an internal social hierarchy, which means that if humans can control the leader, then they will also gain control over the whole herd or whole flock.
There's another crucial requirement for a domestic animal. It needs to get along with humans. Some animals don't have the talent to live on a farm. A zebra could be an ideal domestic animal, potentially as useful as a horse. But evolving in the midst of Africa's great predators, zebras have become flighty, nervous creatures. They have a vicious streak that humans have been unable to tame. That may be why zebras have never been harnessed to a plow or ridden into battle.
I counted up 148 different species of wild, plant-eating, terrestrial mammals that weigh over 100 pounds. But of those 148, the number that have ever been successfully farmed for any length of time is just 14. Goats, sheep, pigs, cows, horses, donkeys, Bactrian camels, Arabian camels, water buffalo, llamas, reindeer, yaks, mithans, and Bali cattle. Just 14 large domestic animals in 10,000 years of domestication. And where did the ancestors of these animals come from? None was from New Guinea, or Australia, or sub-Saharan Africa, or the whole continent of North America. South America had the ancestor of just one large domestic animal, the llama. The other 13 were all from Asia, North Africa, and Europe. And of these, the big four livestock animals, cows, pigs, sheep, and goats, were native to the Middle East. The very same area that was home to some of the best crops in the world was also home to some of the best animals. Little wonder that this area became known as the Fertile Crescent.
Okay, so that's more than just a Jeopardy question, and why we looked at Middle Eastern geography just a little bit. The Fertile Crescent is important agriculturally. That's where most of these animals originated.
The people of the Fertile Crescent were geographically blessed, with access to some of the best crops and farm animals in the ancient world. It gave them a huge head start. What had begun with the sowing of wheat and the penning of goats was leading towards the first human civilization. The archaeological site of Guer in southern Jordan is 9,000 years old, but it has all the hallmarks of a town. A few hundred people lived here in rows of houses that were a wonder of technology. every time I come here, I'm amazed by what those people were doing. Some of the houses have a kind of air conditioning. This window here is to control the air coming from the street inside the house, and the houses, the walls and the floors of the houses from the inside at least were covered with plaster. So people were moving to a concept of homes. It's not a place just to sleep, it is a proper home, and people started to decorate the houses from the inside.
So a little more advanced civilization, he's saying?
In their homes. Because if we are talking about plaster, it is time consuming, it's effort consuming, it's very expensive to have plastered house. As villages grew bigger, there were more people to work on the land. More people could produce more food more efficiently, enough to support specialists within the community. Freed from the burden of farming, some people were able to develop new skills and new technologies. Making plaster from limestone was a major technological breakthrough. The stones had to be heated for days at a time, at a temperature of 1,000 degrees. It may seem insignificant today, but understanding how to work with fire was the first step towards forging steel, a technology that would transform the world. By contrast, places like New Guinea never developed advanced technology. Even today, some people in the highlands are working in ways that have barely changed for centuries.
Technology came, but when they were enslaved by the others that brought the technology with them, the guns, the spears.
When I first came to New Guinea in the 1960s, people were still using stone tools like this axe in parts of the island. And before European arrival, people were using stone tools everywhere in New Guinea. So why didn't New Guinea develop metal tools by itself? And eventually I realized that to have metalworking specialists who can figure out how to smelt copper and iron requires that the rest of the people in the society who are farmers be able to generate enough food surpluses to feed them. But New Guinea agriculture was not productive enough to generate those food surpluses. And the result was no specialists, no metal workers, no metal tools.
The way of life in New Guinea was perfectly viable. It had survived intact for thousands of years. But according to Diamond, people didn't advance technologically because they spent too much time and energy feeding themselves. And then Westerners arrived and used their technology to colonize the country. Yet for all its advantages, the Fertile Crescent is not the powerhouse of the modern world, nor is it the breadbasket it once was. How did it lose its head start? Within 1,000 years of their emergence, most of the new villages of the Fertile Crescent were abandoned. Ironically, the region had a fundamental weakness. Despite having some of the most nutritious crops on the planet, its climate was too dry and its ecology too fragile to support continuous intensive farming. People
were destroying the environment. The waters had been overexploited, the trees had been cut, and this is what when you face a dead end. I mean, you are facing the wall. You will end with landscape like that, I mean, with few trees, with no grass, and with less water. So what we are looking at today is the outcome of overexploiting the environment.
Unable to farm their land, entire communities were forced to move on. The advantages they'd accrued from centuries of domestication might have been lost. But again, geography was on their side.
The Fertile Crescent is in the middle of a huge landmass, Eurasia. There were plenty of places for farming to spread, and crucially, many of those places were to the east and west of the Fertile Crescent at roughly the same line of latitude. Why is that so important? Because any 2 points of the globe that share the same latitude automatically share the same length of day, and they often share a similar climate and vegetation.
So think Italy, Spain, France, Germany.
Were able to prosper in other places along the east-west axis of Eurasia. Wheat and barley, sheep and goats, cows and pigs all spread from the Fertile Crescent, east towards India and west towards North Africa and Europe. Wherever they went, they transformed human societies.
Once the crops and animals of the Fertile Crescent reached Egypt, they caused an explosion of civilization. Suddenly, there was enough food to feed the pharaohs and generals, the engineers and scribes, and the armies of people required to build the pyramids. The same is true of European civilization. From ancient times until the Renaissance, the crops and animals of the Fertile Crescent fed the artists, inventors, and soldiers of Europe. In the 16th century, the same crops and animals were taken by Europeans to the New World. At the time, there was not a single cow or ear of wheat in all the Americas.
Ear of wheat. It's from UCLA.
Now there are 100 million cattle in the U.S. alone. And Americans consume 20 million tons of wheat a year. Modern industrialized America would be unthinkable without the spread of farming from the Fertile Crescent. There are some who think Jared Diamond's argument is too neat.
What? I wonder the other ones. Let me stop it there. All 3 episodes are available on YouTube. You can watch them free. The book's readily available also. But so he said at the same latitude, so those crops as we went east to west, you're okay. The problem was you couldn't go north to south, so you couldn't go into Africa with those European varieties because the day length was different. I spent some time in Ethiopia 10 years ago, and one of the faculty members there lived basically on the equator, and he studied in the Netherlands. And he said, I always read about day length of crops, and he said, I never understood it. He said, because aren't the days all the same length? The sun comes up at 6 o'clock and the sun sets at 6 o'clock. which is what it is on the equator. There's 12 hours of sunlight and 12 hours of darkness. And he did his doctoral work in Netherlands, and he gets there at 4:30 in the afternoon, and it's dark in the winter. I said, it dawned on me, oh, day length is different. And so plants have different day length requirements. So I can't go north and south with it. It's why you can't plant the same crop, the same corn varieties in Wisconsin as you do in Kansas. And so suggested that what they had was a geographic advantage. Not only did they have these native large animals they could use for animal power that were native to the area, but then those crops they developed when the Middle East went dry, they were able to spread east and west and colonize. Okay? And then they colonized the others where they took those crops with them, but they didn't have to have those. They took all those resources. One other, and that is the germs part. Okay? You've probably heard that 90% of the Incas, Aztecs were wiped out by European diseases. Native Americans in North America were wiped out by smallpox. How come Europeans, when they came, they didn't get diseases from the Aztecs, Incas, North American Indian tribes? Why wasn't it the other way around? Why didn't, when English settlers came to the United States, why didn't they all die of some disease that was indigenous to Arapaho? That suggests that because Europeans lived in close proximity to animals, okay, they were around animals all the time. And lots of diseases are mutations from animals. Think avian flu, think swine flu, that had its origins. And basically those viruses, they adapted themselves or mutated themselves to then infect humans. And so because you lived in a house, and next to the house your cattle and your hogs and chickens lived, you had some natural immunity to any of those germs. And then when you took those, when you went then westward, you basically took immunity because your proximity to being raised around animals and the people you encountered didn't have any of that. And they were more powerful than any guns or swords you could use were the diseases you brought, which killed 90% of the population. We really don't know in South America what the populations were because the diseases killed so many. And then they were very manageable to slaughter when so many have been weakened by disease. That's the germ part. Okay? Why National Geographic obviously sponsored it's all about geography. So that Fertile Crescent area had these large animals that could be domesticated, used for power, and then they had these native crops that could be domesticated to use, and then we could spread latitudinally around, and we could spread and move when we had to. The fundamental shift from hunting to gathering, a change, I can't imagine that kind of change that was for societies. And they didn't all happen at once. It happened kind of gradually over time. Some people continued to gather, and some people hunted, and some people farmed. And then eventually, farming was sexy because what's attractive is security and resources, and so that's what's farming sexy. I'm convinced of that. Okay, that kind of change seems kind of enormous compared to whether we're going to get kids to eat in the cafeteria. But it's the same idea, what kind of change we can try and bring about, whether planned or unplanned. Okay? For Thursday, come with a completed worksheet number 1, and you're going to have a quiz. Chapter 1 is a broad overview of the entire book. You can read it and try and understand it, but it's the whole book. For some reason, the author basically wants to cover all the main points in that first chapter. So read, but you're looking just for the definitions and the discussion questions. Don't worry about trying to understand all of that, because you got chapters 2 through 11 to be able to do that. Okay? I'll see you on Thursday.